a social care scrutiny panel. This meeting is being held remotely and also in person and will be filmed and recorded for live and subsequent broadcast available through the Council's website. The Council is a data controller under the General Data Protection Regulations and the Data Protection Act of 2018. We broadcast and record Council meetings to fulfil our public task obligation to enable members of the public to observe the democratic process. Data collected during the process will be retained in accordance with Council published policies available through the Council's website. Members of the Council are reminded that they should follow the Council's established meeting protocols, including around the use of the chat facility, and that comments made in the chat facility are visible to all participants in the meeting, which may include members of the public who have also received invites to the meeting. Thank you for listening to that statement, and we'll just move over to Diane for item 1, apologies, substitutions and declarations of interest.
We have apologies from Provost Mackenzie and Councillor Brooks with no substitutes, and Councillor Daisley with Councillor Curley substituting. Convener will now move to a roll call before asking for declarations of interest. Can the following members please indicate they're present at the meeting either in person or remotely? Councillor Armstrong.
Present in the chamber.
Councillor Brennan.
Present in person.
Councillor Cassidy. Councillor Curley.
Present remotely.
Councillor Jackson.
In the chamber.
Councillor McCluskey.
Present in the chamber.
Councillor Quinn.
Present remotely.
Councillor Reynolds.
Present remotely.
Councillor Robertson.
Present in the chamber.
Are there any declarations of interest?
No. No. Thanks very much, Diane. So we've got a few apologies today, so we'll all just need to be extra scrutinous, the people who are here in the room and those of us who are joining us remotely. So for item 2, it's our revenue and capital budget report, and I'm handing over to Craig for that.
Okay.
Thanks, Craig.
Thank you very much, Convener. This is a standard finance paper that we bring forward every scrutiny panel cycle, and this covers a number of main areas. This first covers our current 23-24 projected outturn position, our capital position and our reserves position. As at period 9, we're currently projecting an overspend of £770,000 in the social care budget. There are a number of over and underspends within the overall budget. The main driver for the total overspend is due to the Children and Families budget projecting a £3.48 million overspend. This is mainly due to residential placements and child respite overspends at period 9. We're planning on using £500,000 of our smoothing reserve to help us for this overall position. Jonathan and his team are currently doing a thorough service review in this area with the view of these costs reducing in 24-25 onwards. This is partially offset by underspends in older persons, learning disabilities, physical disabilities, assessment and care management and mental health, and these are mainly in vacancies and general underspends. If this overspend remains at year end, further use of smoothing reserve will be used to bring this position back into a break-even point. Moving on into the capital section, section 4 shows the current capital position. At this point, we are not showing significant spend to date. This is likely due to be incurred next year, especially with a number of our bigger projects, like the Community Capital Hub project. Appendix 5 shows our overall earmarked reserve position, and this shows we started the year with just over £24 million, and at this point in time we expect to finish with just in the region of about £15 million. But this is based on our current projection. This position will probably change as we approach year end. At this point, happy to take any questions any member may have.
Thanks very much for that, Craig. So just going to open it up for questions and comments. Okay, let's see. Apologies, Councillor Armstrong.
Thanks, Convener. Thanks very much for the report.
I have a question. I'd like some clarification, but I'm not expecting it at this meeting. I'm just wondering if at some point, future meeting, we could have some kind of breakdown of the family placement costs, fostering, adoption, kinship care. I just wonder if it's possible to give a spread of the of the types of provision. Whether for example, whether it's in-house fostering and other other authority fostering, voluntary, not-for-profit or private providers. I just wonder if that's possible. I'm not asking for it today, but it's an area where we seem to have an ongoing overspend, and I would just like some more detail around that, if that's possible. Not today, but perhaps for for the future. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Councillor Armstrong. I'm wondering if Craig or indeed Jonathan online want to make any response to that just now, or just to note it for the future.
Certainly happy to note it. And notice Jonathan's got his hand up, but we're
Sure.
more happy to go and have a look at it in the background as well. And I can link in with Jonathan as well.
Thanks very much, thank you. Jonathan? Oh, Jonathan, I think we've got you on mute just now, so we'll... Is it, yeah? Oh, that's the sound. Sorry, 2 seconds, Jonathan, we'll just get that sorted. I think the sound. I think it's possibly your end. Do you want to try now? No, sorry, Jonathan, that's not working just now. What we'll do is we'll see if we can get that sorted and then come back to you. But I'm sure Councillor Armstrong, as you said, is happy to come back to it a later day. But we'll see if we can get that sorted, Jonathan, because I know you've got other things to speak to. Thanks. Okay, so with that in mind, I'm not seeing any other questions or comments in the room, or indeed online, if we can hear people. And can I just ask then that the panel notes the contents of the report? Thank you, thank you. Okay, so we're moving on to item number 3, and that's our regular National Care Service update, which is again coming from Jonathan Hines. So we'll see if Jonathan's able to speak to that.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, Jonathan, that's great.
Yes.
That's great. Thanks very much.
Okay, thank you, convener. Since the last meeting of the scrutiny panel, the National Care Service Bill was returned to the Scottish Parliament at the end of February with a number of amendments, and it now moves into stage 2, which will conclude early in the summer, with more work ongoing and further amendments and refinements. The work of tripartite meetings has also been continuing, including Scottish Government, NHS and local government representatives, and that tripartite meeting now includes representation from IJB chief officers as well. In terms of some of the key changes that have been indicated around stage, it is expected that a National Care Service Board will be established, which will include Scottish Government, local government, NHS, and importantly, people with lived experience as a minimum in terms of membership. And the National Board, it's suggested, would provide that oversight and governance of social work and social care, as well as community health services. And that includes maintaining an improvement framework around embedding good practice and supporting co-design work for service improvement. The last information I have is that it would be intended that those reformed IJBs would be accountable to the National Care Service Board, and local authorities and NHS would retain existing responsibilities, staff and assets, as we've heard in previous verbal updates. So that's the summary so far, but clearly if there's any questions, I'm happy to note them and try and provide some further information either here or following today's meeting, convener.
Thanks very much for that, Jonathan. So yes, there's been some significant developments since last time we met, obviously, so I'll just open up for questions and comments. Councillor McCluskey.
Thank you, Convener. Thanks, Jonathan, for the update. One question and one suggestion. The question is just around the independence of the chairs of the reformed IJBs locally. There was a suggestion, I think, at the previous iteration of the bill that the chairs of local IJBs would be appointed by ministers rather than the arrangement we've got at the moment, where it's a shared responsibility between health boards and local councils. I'm just wondering if that's been changed at all in the latest version of the bill. And just secondly, in terms of just a suggestion in advance of the next panel, whether it might be possible to circulate to all members after this meeting the stage 1 report that was produced by the Parliament, by the cross-party committee on stage 1, just because I'm conscious I haven't read it myself, but I know it's quite a weighty document that I think would probably be quite useful to the members. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor McCluskey. Jonathan?
Thank you, Convener. And to Councillor McCluskey, yes, I'm sure I can get a web-linked version of the stage 1 report to circulate to members of the panel after today's meeting. The first point in terms of the proposal around local chairs of IJBs being appointed by ministers, in the information that I have before me doesn't provide any additional clarification about that, but I can take that as an action and update Councillor McCluskey accordingly.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. Okay, I'm not seeing any other questions or comment lights on in the room, and my screen has frozen slightly, so I can't see if there's anybody online, but I don't think there is. No. Okay, so thanks very much for that, Jonathan. That would be great to get that stage 1 report, and yeah, there's certainly things moving on. I know that Forza had expressed some concerns about the stage we were at as well, so that'll be really interesting to see that report. Okay, can I just ask then that we note Jonathan's verbal update? Thank you, and thank you, and move on to item 4 has been withdrawn, so we're moving straight on to item 5, which is the Technology Enabled Care Gold Award, and Alan Best is going to take us through that. Thanks, Alan.
Thank you, Chair. The purpose of this report is to advise the social worker and Case Group panel of the progress within our technology-enabled care work, which have now achieved a gold level 2 award accreditation from the Digital Office at the Scottish Government. I'm glad to say Inverclyde has been at the forefront of Scottish telecare digital transformations 2019, and the team has worked hard in line with the Scottish Government funding to help us move from analogue to digital switchover, which is due to happen in 2025. Through rigorous testing and evaluation of the new digital alarm call system, it's shown to be a safe and secure setup, which is fit for the 21st century. And I think it's a credit to the team that we're now, in terms of our digital roadmap, 70% of our transfer into digital, and we'll certainly meet the 100% digital by the end of this year, which I think, again, great credit to the team. Technology-enabled care and support has a really great contribution to make in terms of supporting our members of our community, in terms of helping support timely and safe discharge from hospital, maximising independence and self-management, preventing avoidable presentation at or admission to hospital, supporting care assessment and review, supporting to maintain and reduce levels of need where appropriate, ease pressures on unpaid carers, support re-enrolment, and again, is a really key element of supporting prevention and early intervention. It is recommended to the scrutiny panel that members are invited to note the content of the report and the continuing ongoing work with the tech team locally, which helps to improve people's independence and creates new ways of working for all services, but importantly supports service users, maintains independence and gives reassurance to carers and family members. Happy to take any questions.
Thanks very much, Alan. That's great to hear about Inverclyde being at the forefront, and also just hearing about that, supporting people to get back home and maximise independence, things that we all know are so important. For people, I'll just open up for questions and comments, and I see Councillor McCluskey. You've got your light on, thanks.
Thanks, Alan. Congratulations to the team on the achievement. That's great. Just a couple of questions on the paper. I'm just curious as to what under 4.1 tests that changed to commence with elongating hydration. I'm just curious as to what that is. I'll just run through just a few things. Second, I'm just wondering how is the HSCP linking up with the hospital at home team? Because I know in the health board there's obviously a lot of work being done in terms of hospital at home. Are any of these projects kind of overlapping, or are there any kind of synergies we can look for in the future around what we are doing with digital and what the health board is doing with digital?
Yeah.
Thanks.
If I could come in, and just first on your first one, actually in terms of hydration, I suppose this is a demonstration about how far technology has come, where you can actually use the cup that actually detects how much has been drunk out of it, the difference between drinking and a cup maybe that's been spilt or dropped. So it allows us to sort of monitor somebody's fluid intake from use of a specific cup, and it's a good indicator of not only the fluid they're taking in, but their abilities to actually take the fluid themselves. So again, it's one example of how technology is really blooming in terms of, even a few years ago that technology wasn't available to us. So we have a flat that we can demonstrate all of these elements of technology when they're put together, how they've kind of crossed the portfolio of support that we can give to an individual. In terms of the second question, it's more about our unscheduled care work. This forms part of our portfolio in terms of unscheduled care, about how we can use all these elements of the jigsaw to support the prevention of and also the discharge from the hospital. So it's not really the hospital home approach, it's a wide gambit that we use in terms of unscheduled care. And I'm glad to say that we've really this year put a lot of energy into our unscheduled care work.
Okay, yeah. Thanks very much, Kate.
It's just a point of clarification about the hospital at home and digital care. I actually think there's more work to join it up, Martin, to Councillor McCluskey, to be honest with you. I think that the system needs to understand what the offer is at each part of the system. And as Alan said, it's quite phenomenal if you go to the flat and see all the equipment, and I would urge any elected members around here to take the time out and go and visit it, because hydration is really important with falls. It's considered the primary reason for older people falling in their own hole is the lack of dehydration. So if someone particularly has a urine infection, monitoring that through the digital care. But it is something that we want to grow in Inverclyde, because there's lots of opportunities out there, not just with what we provide, but what other providers provide elsewhere, and also tying it up with the Moving Forward Together programme, because they are interconnected.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks very much, Kate. I know when I went up to see the tech team, the hydration cup was certainly something that was catching everybody's interest. No, definitely, and I've told lots of people about that as an option around Inverclyde. Thanks, Councillor Robertson.
Thanks very much, Kate. Yeah, so again, congratulations, really good, the level 2. My question is about the figures, where it's 70% at the minute, aiming for 100% by the end of the year. I'm just wondering, can I get a better understanding of what 100% means? What will mean that we've reached 100%?
I can get further detail for you, but there are about 1,900 service users that are currently using the technology in terms of both the analogue and digital. So we'd be pushing to get that 1,900 fully digitised by the end of 24. But I can certainly ask the team to pull down a kind of breakdown of that to see how progression has gone.
Okay, thanks. Yes, of course.
Okay, that would be really helpful. And so 1,900. So we're wanting 1,900 people to be using some form of technology, or what's the kind of? Do you know what I mean? So it's not just like, yeah, if we mean the number of people, but is it the scale of what they're actually using as well? I really just want to know what, if we're at 70%, we want to get 100%, I just want to kind of know what successful it's like,
Yeah.
really.
So it's a good question. I think probably the necessity is come 2025, analogue effectively gets switched off. So we need to get everybody onto a digital system, but we need to make sure that digital system, you know, in terms of the comfortable of it using it, and obviously as we always do through assessment and review, ensure that that's appropriate for their needs. And I think as with a lot of digital work, it's also about that giving folk the confidence. This is something different from perhaps what they've had before, and ensure that that confidence is robust for not only the service user but the family member. So as analogue is switched off, and I'll find out when in 2025 it's getting switched off, I'm not sure about that, but it's making sure that we're ready, and the target of the end of 24 was to give us that lead-in protection to make sure that we're well ahead of the game in terms of any potential switch off.
Thanks very much, Alan. Kate, were you wanting to come in on that?
No, it was just to say it's about conversion from analog to digital.
Okay, thanks very much. I know when you hear the sort of like the technology enabled care, it sounds really techy and really sort of high level, but actually when you start talking about the people behind it that are using it, then it's, you know, it sounds really powerful, and thanks very much to everyone for their work on it. So I'll just ask that we note the contents of that report. Agreed. Thanks very much, thank you. And that takes us on to item number 6, which is about the Lens project, some really exciting work that's been going on around children, family, social work, and I think Jonathan is going to talk us through that. Thanks, Jonathan.
Thank you, Convener. This is really a brief update to members of the panel on our partnership in children and families with the Lens project as part of our local commitment to keep the promise to children and young people in Inverclyde. The project was designed to hear ideas from our frontline practitioners across children and families in the HSCP, and it was really focused on the opportunity to make some sustainable changes to the lives of children and families, but really listening to our frontline practitioners who often are best placed to have ideas in terms of simplifying processes or other ideas that would make some considerable difference to the lives of young people. As we get into that partnership, the HSCP Transformation Board pledged £50,000 to support the development of 6 ideas, which arose from an early shortlist of 12, and that really stemmed from a staff event in September last year at the Beacon, where the Ideas to Action programme was launched. Of those 6 shortlisted ideas, our partners with the Lens project then led on a series of structured workshops during the autumn with the teams behind the 6 ideas, and there's more information on those 6 ideas at 3.6 in the report, and I will come back to that shortly. The benefit of members. Investment event, which is quite similar, I suppose, to a Dragon's Den pitch in December, which saw those teams behind the 6 ideas present to an investment panel, and that comprised our chair and vice chair of the IJB, Kate as chief officer, and myself as chief social work officer. So of those 6 ideas, 4 received financial investment and 2 others didn't actually require financial investment to take forward, so they will be taken forward as part of our wider redesign of children and family services. We also have an evaluation report which is appended to my report in today's papers, and that provides a bit more information and feedback. However, as well as those 6 ideas being taken forward to implementation alongside some monthly meetings to resolve any arising issues, I think it's really significant change process in terms of the positive impacts that the workforce has experienced, and certainly the feedback from staff involved in the process over the last 6 months has spoken about being listened to, about what needs to change, and also feeling that culture of trust and delegated responsibility, I suppose, as secondary benefits to the service as a result of this. We have certainly been consulting with our children, young people and families in the development of those ideas, and that continues as the teams have moved now into implementation from Christmas onwards. So I suppose that the final point, that whilst this has been very much a brief summary about children and families, the impact has actually been so well received and recognised that we have made a similar commitment around adult services as well, albeit that our adult services colleagues are at an earlier stage in the Ideas to Investment programme as well. But just to go back very briefly to 3.6 to give members a brief outline of the 6 ideas that our workforce developed. One was very much recognising the strengths of our local communities and keen to explore how we can work closely with the very established third sector provision in Inverclyde around providing a range of supports and life skills to young people as they move towards independence. The team within our 3 care service also recognise that some of our older young people can struggle with the move towards third level education and further education, and really that idea about trying to develop practical skills that supports their move towards the workplace was recognised as quite a barrier given the impact of trauma and deprivation that so many of our young people have experienced. So one idea is to develop a 3 care hub that really focuses those supports to gain qualifications around a small number of young people. The Connected to Care example was one that didn't require financial investment, but that was very much based on the importance of relational practice and building genuine caring relationships with children who have experience of being in care. And as I said, that is one of those 2 proposals that we will weave throughout the mission and the values of our redesign of the wider service. The Feel Good Fund was about recognising the need for equivalence for children in our children's houses in terms of being able to benchmark their pocket money against modern day equivalents, because we realised very quickly that had not been reviewed for quite a number of years, and it left children and young people disadvantaged amongst their peers, and that has an impact on their social life and their identity as well. So more broadly than that, it was about scoping out other ideas that could support young people that our own children and young people in our own families would experience, whether that's driving lessons, access to leisure, or any other opportunities to build memories and achievements in their young adulthood. The last 2 ideas were really significant and they actually work quite well together. The first one was Home for Home, and that really builds on some of the core principles of the promise nationally and in Inverclyde, which recognise that so often spaces that are provided for families to spend time together, for example, if children are in a foster care placement, to spend time with their family, the environments sometimes are quite challenging and can really mitigate against that being a quality and loving experience. So one idea was that we would develop a much more bespoke residential environment, really a flat in one of our local communities, which would give families the opportunity to spend time together, watch TV, go outside, cook, and just spend more quality time together. And the final idea is for our older young people, which is the practice pad, and that recognised a number of challenges that our young people have told us moving on from living in their children's houses or in longer term foster care placements, where they can find moving to their own tenancy to be quite an ambition, but ultimately it comes with significant challenges, and they really do experience quite a lot of social isolation and some challenges around practical tasks of looking after their own home. So the practice pad is an idea that we're working up where young people can learn housekeeping skills, they can learn how to paint a wall, change a plug, and ultimately they can also choose to spend overnights in the practice pad, but very close to our residential children's houses where they can continue to get support as they really build up their practical and emotional resilience to living independently. So that is a summary of the 6 ideas which we are taking forward. We have committed management support to all of them, as well as the financial investment that I spoke about earlier. But hopefully that is a helpful summary. But again, happy to take any questions, convener.
Thanks so much for that, Jonathan. That's just a really great report to read and a chance for us to get to see that. Just seeing the people working most closely with children and families, getting that opportunity to determine their work programme based on what they're seeing day to day, and that investment quite literally in staff, and just which ultimately makes an impact on children and families. So So it's great, and they've got great names as well as we're reading about them. So yeah, thanks for bringing that to us. And I'll just I see Councillor Robertson's got a question or a comment to start us off.
Or both, can I have both?
Both, yeah.
It's great, 6 great ideas that just you're kind of going, absolutely, these are things that we should do. Can I ask how was the process? How did it work? Was it clunky? Was it quite a streamlined process to get us where we are? Is my first question. I've got another one.
Yeah. Just why don't you?
Okay,
Want to give us what you want to?
So process is the kind of, because see if this was a really easy or straightforward process, can we do more of it? Because it sounds pretty good. I think it's come up with some really good ideas. I'd like to know how we sustain the bits of this that really work, because I'm sure they will. And I'd like to put a wee shout out for us to get updates on all of this, just to sort of see how it does work. Yeah,
That's great. Thanks so much, Councillor Robertson. Let's go to Jonathan first. Yeah, Jonathan, did you pick that all up okay? Yeah.
Yes, indeed, Convener. Thank you very much. And to go to Councillor Robertson's first point about the process, we spent quite some time before launching the Lens, working with the Lens team and really thinking about what would have the most effective impact, I suppose. Thinking about the feedback that we've had in different quarters from our children and young people, but also thinking about the time commitment that working through this process would involve for our workforce. It's one thing to have a really good idea, and it's quite a challenge, I think, sometimes to be told, well, we've made a financial commitment there, let's hear it. So actually putting folk in that situation where they could develop the skills to develop those entrepreneurship ideas was actually something that we didn't know how it would land. But the enthusiasm from the launch day right the way through to the present day has been really, really infectious. And I think that's been because of the workshops that the Lens project have delivered around business storytelling and modelling, and also testing ideas as well. So the skills that our staff learned through that process of getting to the investment day itself, I think are really valuable. And the evaluation report that's attached also has some direct quotes from some of our staff who gave that feedback as well. So the process was very well organised, and actually it was a joy to see how it was delivered in December. One of the elements that we as the investment team were keen to understand was that very point about sustainability and ideas that we could invest in to implement, but could be sustained if they're effective and if young people are telling us they're making a difference. And I suppose it's the impact of some fairly small investment, and there is a table within the appendix that shows the financial asks for each of the ideas, and none of them are significant, I would argue, but they are ideas that will have some setup costs, but actually sustainability is one thing that we're building in to implementation to look at whether those costs would be recurring or if there's other ways that we can work with some of our partners in the council or third sector to look at the sustainability options for the future. But we will continue to monitor both the implementation but the impact that the ideas have in reality.
Thanks very much, Jonathan. Yeah, I think Councillor Robertson's very happy with that answer. Sorry, putting words in your mouth. Before I go to Councillor Jackson and Councillor McCluskey, Kate.
It was just to add that I think it's worth recognising that whilst the investment is very small, the impact is huge, actually. So if I take you to thinking through the practice pad, a lot of our young people make choices to leave our care, either foster care or residential care, and have got no right to return around the legislation, and as a result end up in some ways in the homelessness situation or through custody through default because they aren't ready. If you think about the impacts of young people not doing that and being given the opportunity to experience what life could really look like and how it feels like, we'll probably be getting young people that will recognise that maybe 16, 17 and 18 years of age isn't the right time. And we'll have to think about what that looks like in the system, and how do we provide that level of wraparound care. But part of the cost for young people and some of the disadvantages they experience is because they leave care too early. So that should, in many respects, for small amounts. And the home for home is really important because the experiences that that family have and that parent have around, you know, being able to demonstrate in safe and effective care can be really challenging when it is in a public space. And, you know, for years we might have taken up a soft play area. How can you really observe, you know, the impact of the parenting and the nurture within that environment? So we actually think that this is sustainable because our assessments should be a wee bit more straightforward in terms of giving us the opportunity to actually see the development and the progress that both children and the families are making together.
Thanks so much for that, Kate. Councillor Jackson?
Thanks. I suppose my question is a question that I kind of thought is, you know, this is a good report and they do put a lot of work and effort in to take care of these young people, get them ready for eventually leaving and to take up their own tenancies. And I get the saying here about 16, 17, 18 suddenly are they ready at that point. One of my concerns is the tenancies that these young people are taking up when they do leave. And I suppose the question is the relationship we have with social landlords, because if I can give you an example of one young person who I know has left this within the last few weeks, and the tenancy she was given is just along the street in a flat where there's no drug dealing. There was a starting last year right across one of the local pubs. I understand there's not a lot of vacant properties, but when you put all this work and effort into raising these young adults to get into the world, then they face these kind of barriers and risks, and they are real life risks, you know, to be placed in these positions. I suppose my concern is what relationship do you have, and what kind of input do you have in getting these tenancies? Because I don't suppose the social landlords know the background of these young adults, unless they do, I don't know.
Thanks, Councillor Jackson.
Jonathan, I think, wants to come in, and I'm happy to pick up anything because I've been having these discussions too. Councillor
That's what we have. Social guidance, I don't understand sensitivities of that.
Yeah. To do that too. I think it sounds like Jonathan and Kate can have an input just now and then possibly later as well too. Thanks, Councillor Jackson. Jonathan?
Thank you, Convener. And to answer Councillor Jackson's question, I'm really impressed, I have to say, by the positive relationships that our 3Care team in particular and our residential teams have developed with a number of the RSLs in Inverclyde. I think, like anything, it is always going to be a developing relationship, but I'm really pleased that through some of the work of the Promise Board, for example, and even having social landlords represented on our Child Protection Committee, that's another example of some of that really good partnership working where we're understanding the needs of our young people and the priorities in terms of their safety. I suppose another example about how we've developed around vulnerability in terms of the local housing strategy would be within our community justice outcome improvement plan, which is in draft form at the minute, and the intent and the commitment for the council to fully implement the SURE standards, which are housing on release standards for individuals, including young people, being released from custodial sentences back into the local area. So the importance of appropriate, manageable and sustainable tenancies will always be at the heart of our continuing care and our 3Care plans for our young people. And I suppose that as part of that, we want to recognise the preferences of young people perhaps to return to areas that they're familiar with, but also to continue to provide support, as we've made reference to a number of examples that we're developing through the lens and beyond around that, because as Kate has said, the risk of failed tenancies or abandoned tenancies by our young people is something that is a fundamental part of our work around providing that scaffolding, particularly to our older young people through our 3Care team. But I know Kate wanted to come in maybe from a more strategic angle, but operationally certainly the relationships are strong and we continue to build on those.
Thanks, Jonathan. I'll bring Kate in next and then come back to you, Councillor Jackson.
So I've had the opportunity to go out and have a think about what that looks like. I completely agree, Councillor Jackson, that we need to look at the sustainability and what that looks like and what that tenant and where that tenancy is offered. And I think that I've asked for a bit of work to be done across the board to have a look at the point where young people leave our care, how long do they stay, okay, and where and how long for, and why do they stay? Because I think we have to kind of understand our own data first. But it is something that I'm really conscious around some of the challenges that are about in the community, and have raised that with one of the housing providers about the abandoned tenancies and why at the point, why do they get abandoned, and I think we have to be more curious around the reasons for that. So I think that that's something that I've spoken to the convener around, and I don't know if you want to come in.
Yeah, thanks very much, Kate. Do you want to come back in first, Councillor Jackson? And then I think really just what Kate was saying as well, that we're hoping that the next social work and social care scrutiny panel will have a report coming to us to do with housing, and I know that the local housing strategy is also at environment and regeneration this week too. So I think there'll be a chance to definitely have a closer look at it again at next panel. Yeah. But okay, thanks very much, Councillor Jackson. Thanks for those responses, Councillor McCluskey.
Thanks, Tina. I really like this approach because it's kind of taking a try to work in the right language. Do you see it with like a calculated risk? You know, like we're investing money in things that you know, are really good ideas. But I'm just wondering, in the context of everything that we're dealing with in terms of the level of change that we're going to have to deal with over the next few years, how do we take what we learn from this approach into the change programmes that we're doing? Because learning from our frontline staff is surely the best way to, you know, do things like service redesign and that sort of stuff. So, you know, how do we take the learnings from this and scale it up and be prepared to maybe be as kind of risk-taking, for want of a better expression, in the way that we redesign our services?
Thanks, Kate.
I completely agree, and if you think about the context that we're working within in a health and social care partnership across the board nationally, if we don't look at innovating and doing things differently, we're not going to get the outcomes that actually people require and deserve. So, I mean, I've always been of the view that the expert is always your worker closer to the point that we're trying to solve. And actually, they hold a lot of expertise, but the system doesn't allow to build on their experience. So that's kind of the messages that we're now giving out, Councillor McCluskey, by the fact that we've done this and we started and finished with practitioners. That allows them to feel much more open and much more able to tell us, to help us to kind of solve the problems that we keep asking ourselves. And sometimes that they can provide it in a much more decluttered way and a simple way, as you can see, okay, from these submissions. And because they're close to it and they know what really matters to people. And that'll be part of a theme around our redesign. And one of the things, I've just came back and there's colleagues in the room and elected members in the room that were at that event today around our ADP and the development of the ADP plan and the voice of lived experience. We are listening now and we're building on the experience of people that have had that experience. So whatever we do around the lens, we need to build on it, not just with our own staff, but with ensure that we do actually truly listen to lived experience and people that know what these changes needs to happen. One of the things that we have reviewed is our transformation fund. So in the past, we would have looked at transformation through the eyes of developing a new post to deliver whatever the proposal was. And yet 9 times out of 10, when we look at the impact, and Kate and I have this great debate, we can't see the impact. But we're convinced that this will give us impact because we'll measure it. So we're wanting to kind of rethink our whole relationship with transformation and replace it with an innovation event on a yearly basis, that our own staff contribute to that. We then want to build on some of the learning with our third sector and how we co-produce and how we co-project, co-design, as opposed to just going down the traditional route of procuring services, and make sure that it's truly outcome focused and it's building on their experiences. And then you've got lived experience too, because it's people it's our people that find themselves in the situation, that they leave tenancies, if you look at the previous example, that know what it needs to get sorted. And that's the thing that we need to start listening to. So at each stage, as we implement change, these are the 3 areas that we'll be focusing on: our staff, our partners, and the people, the lived experience, the people that actually have lived and walked that walk. And that's how we'll get to design where we are. It does take a leap of faith around doing things quite differently, but I think that with the conditions are here within Inverclyde, that I think that people are wanting to embrace that, and they know that we've got situations around vacancies that we can't fill. If we don't do things differently, people are not going to get the services, so we're going to have to change how we deliver them, and that's a good example of how we do that.
Thanks very much, Kate. That was such a full response there. Thank you. No, thank you so much, because that really gave us, I'm sure, almost everything, if not everything we needed to hear. So I'll just check if Jonathan was wanting to come back in there. But I think I'm sure that's, in response, I think you've said it all there. I think the only other point I would make was that when you were discussing it as well, you were saying that there was such a huge buy-in from the staff, that they were really ready to come along and attend and take part and just give all that innovation. So a big thanks to everyone involved and to everybody who came along to the sessions. And just hearing you talk about all that innovation and co-design and co-production is great. So thanks very much. And all that's left is just to ask if we can note the report. Thank you. Thanks very much. And then that